As a producer, we make various kinds of movies. One of the things I like most about my career is that I'm not the action guy or the comedy guy or the drama guy. I've been able to do all different kinds of movies, and that's exciting. Films do well because it's the best form of entertainment and escapism to go to.
Welcome to this segment of Mawaheb Chats. We're here with Ashok Amritraj, who is an internationally renowned, award-winning producer with 100 films under his belt in the span of 30 years of his career, with a worldwide gross exceeding $2 billion. Some of my favorite films of his are Premonition, Bringing Down the House, Get Carter, and Machete. Thank you very much for this opportunity to allow us to hang out here with you and ask you a few questions. I have a question that I could start off with. It seems that, to make it big in the industry, especially in Hollywood, it's always useful to know someone on the inside. And even though it's a lot more of an intimate industry here, some people still find that challenge, And it's interesting to find out how you were able to break into Hollywood, especially coming from a different country at the time.
It was also a different time. It was sort of 1980, 81. I came to LA in 75. I was playing professional tennis. A gentleman called Jerry Buss brought me out there. And for the next 7-8 years, I continued to play professional tennis and then decided to dive into the film industry, plunge in. There's no other way in the film business, right? I mean, once you decide to get into it, you just got to go for it. So I went for it, but it was one of these things where being naive and, not necessarily understanding the difficulty I was going to face, got into it, knew a lot of people through my tennis, and so I was able to pick up the phone and call people. But as I've often said, everybody returned my call. They all wanted to play tennis with me. Nobody wanted to read a script that I sent over. But about 4 or 5 years into it, I raised a little money privately, made a little film for $500,000, loved every minute of being out in the Arizona desert shooting this movie. And since that time, went independent. And in 1984, I was sitting in my office, and I got this manila envelope with this young man's picture. And so I saw a phone number at the bottom, picked up the phone, called him up, and he came over to the office. I said, "What do you do for a living?" He said, "Well, I act." So he couldn't speak English very well. So I said, "Well, what do you do to make money?" So he said, "Well, I drive limos." So I said, okay. So, he was an out-of-work actor. I was an out-of-work producer at that point. We tried to make a movie together. We couldn't. And then in 1990, we reconnected at the Cannes Film Festival, and this kid comes running up to me. I'm sitting at the Carlton Terrace. And he says, out of 800 photographs I sent out, you were the only guy to call me back. We got to make a movie together. So we made a movie called Double Impact. His name was Jean-Claude Van Damme. After that, things came together.
Rejection is something that scares a lot of people. I think here, especially, people are afraid of the word no, that it makes them not even want to try sometimes. Do you have a particular rejection story that you remember?
Well, the most important thing about the entertainment industry is to realize that it's all about rejection. So, if you don't want to get the no's, then you should be in the movie business, because you'll hear the word no a lot more than you'll hear the word yes.
Of course.
But on the other hand, you only need the word yes once to get your movie made.
That's true.
Right? So that's not bad.
I was wondering, you guys touched on the topic of being from a different cultural background, going in the industry like that. How does that influence your choice of projects?
I think, I grew up in India. I was born and raised in India. I went through school and college in India. And so a lot of my influences come from that background. So if you look at Double Impact, they'll say, oh God, this has a feeling of an Indian movie with the brothers and this and that. So I do think I carry along with me the tradition and culture of growing up in India, and use it in a different way in the Hollywood medium.
I have a 3-question combo.
3?
So
okay.
I was waiting for everyone to finish off the questions.
Okay.
So who would you say yes to now after you've been through all of this? Who would you say no to? And which is the movie that you almost said not to and then said yes to and turned out to be a success?
Oh, complicated. The yes and no's are more about the script, more about if we, if I like it a lot, if both my creative executives and my sales executives, because it's a joint effort in many ways. At the end of the day, the decision comes to me, but I would not make a movie that my international sales guy said, there's no way we can sell this internationally. I think we live in a very collaborative medium. I think you have to listen to other people and figure out how to make it work. At least the independent film model works that way. At the end of the day, once I get input, I make the decision whether we are going forward or not. It's to a certain extent dependent on who the filmmaker is and who the talent is, or generally we have to go find the talent for the filmmaker. It's less one individual today that drives my decision whether I say yes or no. Now, that can change. Brad Pitt comes to me and says he wants to make a movie. There's a very high level of chance that we are probably going to make it, depending on what the budget is and so on and what the movie is. So each one varies a little bit. There's those that I can say I'm happy I made, whatever the process is. And in most of those movies, there is a moment in time when you're thinking to myself, God, is this the right movie to make? Who's the audience for this movie? We ask ourselves this all the time. Who is the audience for this movie? So there's always a moment of time when there's a lot of doubt and you want to, you're lying awake at night at 3 o'clock in the morning before you greenlight the movie. There's just so many movies that, are presented to us. You almost make, for whatever reason, it just doesn't happen and it goes on to become a big hit. Well, I don't lose any sleep over those, So as long as I can make enough hits, I'm happy. I always wish independent films do great in the marketplace, because then it helps all of us get movies made. So as long as the independent filmmaking level is kept up high, then we can all aspire to make those movies, and it becomes just a little bit easier. Yeah. Every time there's an American Hustle or a 12 Years a Slave, or this year was very strong. There were even little movies like Fruitvale Station, and all of these movies are, they were really good movies. A lot of really good independent films were made this year. Yeah. And that's always a good thing.
I have a triple impact question.
Oh,
another one.
Yeah.
We've gone past double impact.
Oh, yeah. That's the challenge. All right. What is the most difficult thing that you've ever faced, and then later in the future, when you thought about it, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe that I thought this is difficult. Like, it became easier in your eyes and how you see things. Secondly, the atmosphere around you, when you were growing up in this and dreaming about becoming in the place that you're at right now, what was the atmosphere around you? Like friends, family, were they putting you down? Were they telling you that you're dreaming, you're not gonna make it, or you're dreaming big? And what happened after you reached your goal? Third one, what do you think about the film industry in the Middle East?
Well, I'll answer your second question first. I grew up in a tennis playing family, so we were all professional tennis players. My brothers and I, we played at Wimbledon and so on. So when I decided to make the transition, it was a shock to the family, because, nobody in our family had ever been involved in the entertainment business, and it was a really difficult moment, to tell my parents, and then to gradually get their support. Things that I've faced that are difficult. Let's just say the thing to find most difficult in the film industry is a great screenplay. Because we read so many. I would say as a company we get presented about 100 projects a month, over 1,000 a year, and we probably make 5 a year. So the mortality rate and finding a screenplay is not easy. I'm very optimistic about your opportunities in the Middle East today compared to where it was 10, 15, I'm talking about film particularly, and especially in the UAE compared to 10 years ago. If you look at it today, you've got a film industry, you've got Imagination, you've got 2454, you've got a production setup that's coming together. Fast and the Furious is coming to shoot here, all of which generates excitement within the filmmaking community. And I think filmmaking as a whole starts to become more acceptable. And then you've got to get into the infrastructure aspect, and then you've got to create the environment and the ecosystem for filmmaking. All of that, I think, is being done right now from the ground up. So I would look at what's happening here in the UAE and in Abu Dhabi as a very positive step towards something that over the next 5 to 10 years, you should be able to point to films that y'all are doing here and say, you know, this is great.
There are great movies that are made from the region and good stories, but what is stopping us from crossing this threshold of being commercially successful in other parts of the world?
Whether it's an Indian movie or an Arabic movie or a Chinese movie, or it's very, when you say, do they cross over to a larger audience? Those are still niche movies in a Western audience. Who we call the NRIs, the non-resident Indians in America, go to see the Indian films. You don't get a lot of guys from Texas and Iowa and Kentucky going to see a Bollywood film. It just isn't yet translating in that way. Similarly Arabic, similarly any other Asian language. But that's not to say the movies are not good or they're not, you know, they are all starting to get more attention. I think as the world globalizes, as the economy is very different than it was, I think America starts to pay more attention to the rest of the world. That translates to a curiosity, but along with that is the quality of the filmmaking. So you have to make movies that, as we were just talking, that is for this part of the world, but can also translate to a global audience.
You know, I have so many more questions to ask you, but unfortunately we're out of time.
Oh yeah, well, I've enjoyed this. You guys are great. You guys are terrific.
Thank you.
Good luck with everything.